Yo, what's happening, man? We back with another one. It's your boy Ralph Sneaks, another episode of Damn You Two Sports Talk Show. Episode, I think it's 24, I believe. Coming to you live with another one. Make sure you head over to YouTube, subscribe to the content, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when new content drop. If you want to head over to Instagram, follow the page over there at damn_YouTube_sports talk. Click the link in the bio. You can subscribe that way. If you want to follow my personal page, it's Ralph_Sneaks. Twitter, Damn You2 Sports Talk. That's where that over there on Twitter. I follow back. Make sure y'all head over there and subscribe. But it's early. NFL. I know we only 2 weeks into the season, but we got some early surprises. Sometimes surprises ain't necessarily good. You know, it could be a bad surprise, like you surprised that a team ain't doing as well as out the gate as you thought they was gonna do, or you surprised that a team coming out the gate is doing as well as they do. So we're gonna get into both. We're gonna run through all the divisions. We're gonna run through the surprise teams in the divisions, both AFC and NFC. Because if some of these teams don't turn it around quick, then they may not make the playoffs. You know, or if they do, they're gonna need help from other teams to make the playoffs down the stretch. Because we done had some solid matchups already to start the season in these first 2 weeks. So, you know, we're gonna jump right to it. I ain't gonna really hold you too long. We're gonna jump right to it. We're gonna start with the AFC. Let's start with the AFC East. I got two teams that are surprising in this division. Now, I don't know how long these teams will be surprising in this division. We're gonna start with the Buffalo Bills. I'm surprised that the Buffalo Bills start the season 2-0. They could be 1-1 if Arizona took care of trying to find Marvin Harrison in Game 1 the way they did in Game 2. Buffalo could be 1-1, but they didn't, so they 2-0, beating Arizona Week 1, and then coming back and beating Miami. It was over that Thursday night. They played Miami. So if you look at the Buffalo Bills in this division, I think the Buffalo Bills is the team in this division that lost the most. Every other team in this division either stayed the same or added to the roster. I think they lost a lot in Buffalo. You're looking at Gabe Davis. He's gone down to Jacksonville, who Buffalo play this week coming up, by the way. Gabe Davis down in Jacksonville. Stephon Diggs down in Houston. Jordan Pryor, he's with division rival Miami Dolphins. Tre'Davious White, they lost him out to the LA Rams. So they lost a lot. And then they lost the linebacker, I believe. I can't remember his name. I think he's injured. It's got him. So he's out. Buffalo, they lost a lot. You know, so now they're relying on Josh Allen and a rookie receiver to take over as their number one, and Keon Coleman, who they drafted in the second round out of Florida State. So they're waiting on him. You know, this is the guy that's going to have to take over to be the number one wide receiver, Keon Coleman. He's a rookie. So they're going to rely heavily on James Cook and Josh Allen. So I think the Buffalo Bills in this division lost more than any other team in this division. All the other teams in this division either stayed the same or they added. You know, you're looking at the Jets. They got Aaron Rodgers. They didn't have it. We're not even going to count last season. Aaron Rodgers being a New York Jet. Yeah, he was a New York Jet by contract, but he didn't play for the New York Jets. He only played 4 plays and then he was done for the season. So that don't even really count. So the Jets get Aaron Rodgers. They also added Mike Williams. You know what I'm saying? So they added to the roster. Meanwhile, Buffalo, they lost rather than added to the roster. They lost more than they added to the roster. You know, so Buffalo starting the season 2-0, considering what they lost. And the fact that there was rumors that Sean McDermott could possibly be on the hot seat this season if he didn't, you know, get an emotion going up there in Buffalo, you know. But for them to come out and start the season 2-0 with wins against Arizona at home and going at Miami. And let me say this, Von Miller, I don't know what the hell has got into Von Miller, but he done kind of got into a time machine and went back, and he's kind of rejuvenated. This is actually perfect timing for the Buffalo Bills because this couldn't happen at a better time for the Buffalo Bills considering all what they lost this offseason. They needed Von Miller to play the way he's playing to start this season. Now, I don't know how long it's going to last because of Von Miller, you know, He's starting to be he's an injury prone player now. So injuries have held him back for the past few seasons. But the way he's came out playing this season so far, and I like I say, it's only 2 games in. We're only 2 weeks into the season. So this couldn't be come at a better time for Buffalo, considering what they lost. So the Buffalo Bills are one of my surprise teams in that division, along with the New England Patriots. I didn't think I would be saying this after week 2 about the Patriots. Now, like I said, it's only week 2. There's still 15 games to go. There's still plenty of time for teams to fall off. You know, in the NFL, you can fall off quick. It's quick. It's easier to fall off than it is to get it going in the NFL. So the New England Patriots, who are at the New York Jets this week, start the season so far 1-1. They very well could be 2-0. Week 1, they went on the road against Cincinnati, and I think that was the biggest point spread of that week, and they came out on top with a victory in Cincinnati. Now, I granted Cincinnati, T. Higgins was a no-go. Jamar Chase just getting back because he missed preseason and camp and all this, holding out for a contract. I get all that. Cincinnati lost some pieces too. But for them to go on the road at Cincinnati and get a win there, that was big. And even though they lost to Seattle this past week, that game could have went either way because Seattle beat them 23-20 in OT. They went to OT with a good Seattle Seahawks team at home in which they had a chance to win that game and should have won that game. So that the New England Patriots could very well be sitting at 2-0 right now. Now, I'm not saying it's going to last long looking at the Patriots roster, but if you look at the Patriots with rookie head coach Gerard Mayo, they're starting on the defensive side of the ball because they look good defensively even with the departure of Matthew Judon. Matthew Judon, he got the hell on. He's down in Atlanta, and they still look good despite losing Matthew Judon. Now, the Patriots secondary is damn good with Christian Gonzalez, Jabril Peppers, and then you got Kyle Duggan. So the secondary is looking damn good over there. So they got an actual place to start on that team, you know. And I knew that they were going to start on the defensive side of the ball. They got a defensive head coach, and they had some good, solid defensive pieces over there. Even when they traded away Matthew Judon, they still were going to be a good, decent, solid defensive team with Gerard Mayo being the head coach over there, defensive guy. So I'm just surprised that they started 1-1 and could very easily be 2-0. So if you New England, you got something to build on. Jacoby Brissett over there, I'm not sure when they're going to turn the ball over to Drake May. But I wouldn't do it quite yet. As you can see, a lot of these rookie quarterbacks, they need to be sitting and learning anyway. You know, if you're the New England Patriots, Drake May ain't about to take you to the make you a playoff contender or make you a contender once you get into playoffs. You're not even a contender to win the division. So I wouldn't be in no urgency to start Drake May. I would sit Drake May as long as Drake May need to be sat. As long as the team is showing progress and making progress with a veteran quarterback, he sit, he learn, get through this season. Don't throw him out there because you're in a tough division. You got the Bills twice, the Jets twice, the Dolphins twice. So there's really no urgency to throw him out there. It's not like you gave up a lot to get him. And even if you did give up a lot to get him, there's still no urgency to throw him out there. You know, you got a veteran quarterback in Jacoby Brissett that's capable of getting you through this season, and let the young guy learn and go from there. You don't want to tear his confidence and break his confidence now, and then you put him in and you don't get what you thought you were going to get out of him, and then you got to pull him, and that's his confidence shot. So let him sit and learn as long as he needs to sit and learn, and let this defense continue to be the driving point of this team with Gerard Mayo as the head coach. But I'm surprised the New England Patriots is sitting 1-1. You know, like I said, they could very easily be 2-0 because that game they lost to Seattle Sunday, went into overtime, and they could have went either way. They lost a close one, 23-20. So let's move on to the AFC West. The Oakland Raiders, another team that's surprising right now, 1-1. I'm not surprised at the Kansas City Chiefs being 2-0. You know, I'm not surprised at the LA Chargers being 2-0. Harbaugh's over there now, and he had a quarterback to work with, Justin Herbert. And even though they got rid of some receivers, they also got a couple receivers in there too. So I'm not as shocked about the Chargers right now being 2-0. I'm more so shocked about the Raiders being 1-1. I thought the Raiders was gonna be 0-2 with Gardner Minshew as the quarterback over there. But Gardner Minshew is actually tied for second in passing yards right now. And like I said, it's still just week 2. We only 2 weeks in. A lot can change between now and week 17. I get all that. A lot can change. But right now, he's tied for second in passing yards. And they got Brock Bowers, who's second in receptions. So right now, it seems like they have a formula. Antonio Pierce has a formula for how he's going to go about rebuilding his team and getting his Raider team back on track to being what they should be. The formula seems to be on the defense, starting on the defensive side of the ball, being tough. Well, first of all, let me back up and say that you can tell this team started to play better and play improved football when Antonio Pierce took over. They started to play harder when Antonio Pierce took over, especially on the defensive side of the ball, right? So now they got the defense, which look like they're going to be legit because they just went on the road and beat the Baltimore Ravens. So defensively, they look like they're going to be a good, legit team, And on the offensive side of the ball, with Gardner Minshew, they got 2 solid tight ends, and you got a veteran wide receiver, Devontae Adams. So it looks like the game plan is to run the ball, play action, get it to your vets, and get it to your safety valve tight end, Brock Bowers, who not only can line up as a tight end, you can split him out as a receiver in certain formations. So you got a safety valve and 2 tight ends and a damn good one in Brock Bowers, who you took in the first round initial draft. Well, hell, both of you got 2 solid tight ends and Michael Myers and Brock Bowers, who just took in the first round. So you can get the ball out to either one of those guys. Then you got a veteran receiver, Devontae Adams. And you got Madison there and Zamir White. So you're splitting carries between 2 backs, and you got I call him a bridge quarterback, like Gardner Minshew. They're capable of getting you through a season or 2, until you get your quarterback situation better situated, or better solidified. But with this defense, the way they playing out there with it under Antonio Pierce, defensively, I'm surprised the Raiders look like this. I didn't think the Raiders was going to come out and look like this. And I don't think that the Raiders are going to lay down this season. I think the Raiders are going to be a team that you're going to have to play for 4 quarters. And Baltimore not home losing to the Raiders. The Raiders going on the road winning that game. It seemed like the team is buying into the concept of the Antonio Pierce. You see guys talking and building other guys up out there. They actually got an identity and a coach out there. And I think Antonio Pierce has got those guys believing, much more than Josh McDaniels did when he was out there. These guys look like they rejuvenated. These guys look like they want to be there. These guys playing tough. These guys playing physical. These guys playing with identity. These guys are really playing out there for Antonio Pierce. So I think that's huge to build off of if you are Antonio Pierce and you are the Las Vegas Raiders. You know what I mean? That's huge when you got guys that's buying in and going above and beyond the expectations and putting forth that type of effort. That's huge out there. So I'm surprised at the Raiders, sitting at 1-1, and I think they're going to be a good, solid team, which I didn't think that. But now looking at how they start the season, and like I said, it's only 2 games. We're only 2 weeks in. But, I think the way this team is played, now if injuries come in, then that changes, some things. Because injuries do play a big part in, these teams and how they play, personnel, this, that, and third. But I'm not so much surprised. I'm not surprised at all that Kansas City starting 2-0. I'm not surprised at all that LA Chargers with Harbaugh out there starting 2-0. J.K. Dobbins, I think he's the lead rusher in the NFL right now. So I'm not actually surprised because Harbaugh actually came into a good situation. Having a quarterback already there, not really having to go have a bridge quarterback to get you to the draft, to get you a quarterback. You have a run game there with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. You let Keenan Allen go. He's in Chicago. And Mike Williams is over there with the New York Jets. But you drafted Ladd McConkey, and you had second-year receiver Quentin Johnson now from TCU. You got him out there. So, and then you brought in Hayden Hurst, a more than serviceable tight end. So I'm not surprised that the Chargers started 2-0. I just think more of their issues was coaching than personnel anyway. When Staley was there, he did a lot of he had a lot of fuck ups. You know what I mean? As a coach, he had a lot. Even though they made the playoffs, they could have done better with the team that they had if it wasn't for some of his coaching errors. So I think majority of what the Chargers' issues were coaching, not so much roster. It was just coaching. So now that they got Harbaugh over there, I'm not surprised that they 2-0. Despite losing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler, they lost him too. But like I said, they replaced him with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and then drafting Ladd McConkey and having second year Quentin Johnson there, and bringing in Hayden Hurst as the tight end. And they took Joe Alt in this year's draft, in which they were already, had a pretty solid line. Because I think Slater is there as well. They drafted a couple years ago. So, a few years ago, Rashawn Slater, I think his name is Rashawn Slater. I think he came out of Northwestern, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think he came out of Northwestern. But, you know what I mean? I'm not surprised that they 2-0. Not surprised at Kansas City, and I'm not surprised at Denver being 0-2, despite and let me just stop right here with Denver. I think the Denver Broncos, I think the issue that's going to be for the Denver Broncos is going to be Sean Payton. I think that the game of football, or in the NFL rather, I think the game evolves and moves so quickly that if you essentially take time away from football, by the time you come back, the game ain't the same when you come back that it was when you left. And I think that's what's happening with Sean Payton. Sean Payton don't seem to be the type of coach for what a game is right now. I think he was an old school offensive minded guy that hasn't adapted to the new era of football. And I think that time he took away from coaching, that short period of time he took away from coaching, may have hurt him to some degree. Now, I'm not saying take time away from the NFL and go coach somewhere. At least you're still coaching. Because when Harbaugh left the NFL, he still was coaching. He was just coaching on the college level, which ultimately helped him out. And I think it's going to help him out coming back to the NFL, because the young guys he was coaching in college, those are the guys that are now going into the NFL. So he's not going to have an issue with the younger guys coming into the NFL. He's not going to have an issue with transitioning from what the NFL was when he was there to what it was when he was in college to now what it is that now that he's back in the NFL. I think he's going to have a much smoother transition back into the NFL versus what Sean Payton is going to have, because Sean Payton was not coaching. Harbaugh was coaching. He just wasn't coaching on the NFL level, which is going to help him now, having coached in college, and those young guys that's in college is now getting into the NFL. So I think what's going to hurt the Denver Broncos ultimately is going to be Sean Payton. I don't think Sean Payton, even though they got Bo Nix, I just want to see how the Denver Broncos, with Sean Payton as the head coach, goes with a young quarterback like Bo Nix, because we see it didn't work when he came there and had Russell Wilson. That didn't work, So far, they've started the season 0-2 with a rookie quarterback. Now I don't know what Sean Payton's next move is, because, like I said, it's hard to say. I think Sean Payton would still be a good coach if he had a veteran quarterback. He's still a good offensive coach with a good veteran quarterback. It just didn't work with Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson wasn't his guy. But now that he has a young Bo Nix, I don't know how his offense is going to run with a young quarterback as the starter. Now, if he had a veteran quarterback in there, I think it would be much more. It would be much better, because now what's happening in Denver is you got Cortland Sutton, who's suffering from having a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. And I would say you got Pat Surtain on there. You got the defensively, with Pat Surtain, is that you just paid him and all this. But I think that's going to be the issue with Denver this season. I think they're not going to get the type of production they want, because Sean Payton doesn't really know how to coach offense with a young quarterback. I think he can coach offense with a veteran quarterback. And that's going to be the issue. I'm anxious to see how that transition, because like when you miss time coaching, the NFL still goes. So once you get back into the NFL and start coaching, it's up to you to catch up to where the NFL is at. Not what the NFL was when you last coached, but you got to come in there and be up to speed to where the NFL is at and where it's going, not to where it was when you stopped coaching. And I think that's going to be the issue in Denver. But moving on, AFC South, I think the biggest surprise is the Jacksonville Jags being 0-2. I'm not surprised that the Houston Texans are 2-0. I expected Houston to be much better with additions that they added on their team. DeMeco Ryans, second year over there. CJ Stroud coming off that rookie year he had. So I'm not surprised that Houston's sitting 2-0, adding Stephon Diggs, adding Joe Mixon. Defensively, I expected them to be a little better than they were last year. Offensively, I expect them to be a little better than they were last year. I expect CJ Stroud to take another step. I expect all that from Houston. So I'm not surprised Houston is sitting at 2-0. But I am surprised that the Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting at 0-2. I think Jacksonville Jaguars got the more experienced head coach in Doug Peterson over there, a guy who coached Philly and won a Super Bowl in Philly with the Eagles. Jacksonville also has the more experienced quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is getting paid top 5 money in the NFL. They also made additions to this team in the offseason. They brought in Gabe Davis, the wide receiver out of Buffalo. They still got Evan Ingram there. Christian Kirk is still there. ETN is still there. Tank Bigsby is still there, who they drafted out of Auburn. They also drafted the wide receiver Brian Thomas out of LSU. So I'm surprised they sitting at 0-2. They lost to Miami week 1, and then they lost to Cleveland this past weekend. They lost at Miami, in which they had a lead in that game. And then Miami ultimately came back and won the game. And they got to travel to Buffalo this week. So they could be looking at 0-3. Then, on the defensive side of the ball, you got Trayvon Walker up front. You got Josh Allen up front. And then you just signed Tyson Campbell. You inked him to a deal. So I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars like, you got to get this together now. You got the more experienced coach in this division. Callahan in Tennessee, he just got there. DeMeco Ryans' second year in Houston. In Indy, they sitting 0-2 because they haven't had a lot of games played with Anthony Richardson. But if you Jacksonville, you sitting here at 0-2 and you got the more experienced head coach and quarterback, a quarterback in which you paying top 5 money to, so that game at Miami, you got to close that game out. You got to find a way to win that game in which you had a lead. And then you lost to the Browns, and we saw how the Browns looked week 1 opening up against the Cowboys. I understand it's the Cowboys, and they got a good defense, but we seen what the Cowboys' defense was against the Saints this past weekend. They got chopped up. You know what I mean? So they got chopped up. You know how you sit at the hibachi table, and they cooking that hibachi in front of you, and they chopping that shit up on their grill? That's how the Cowboys' defense got carved and chopped up by the Saints. So if you are the Jacksonville Jags, you got to sit there and think to yourself, like, how and why the hell are we sitting 0-2 with losses to Miami and Cleveland, in a game in Miami which we had to lead, and a team that we should have beat in Cleveland because Deshaun Watson don't look the same. I think Myles Garrett is dealing with an injury. I didn't watch that game. I'm not sure how much of the game he played, if he played. But Deshaun Watson don't look the same. They don't have Nick Chubb back. And Myles Garrett is injured to some degree, which I don't know. Like I said, I didn't watch that game. But if you Jacksonville, you got to get this shit fixed, or it's going to be some questions going on down there in Duval about the Jags, because you shouldn't be sitting at 0-2. You should have at least a win. And I'm surprised with the additions that they made that they sitting at 0-2. And like I said, they got the more experienced head coach in Doug Peterson, and they got the more experienced quarterback in Trevor Lawrence in that division, with Anthony Richardson being really only a year, well, hell, not even that, because he missed that majority of last season with injury. They shut him down for the season. He had an injury, and then CJ Stroud second year, Anthony Richardson second year, and Will Levis over there in Tennessee. So if you are Trevor Lawrence, you are the more experienced head quarterback in this division, and if you are Doug Peterson, you are the more experienced head coach in this division. You should not be sitting 2-0 right now. You should at least be 1-1. And like I said, you probably gonna go 0-3 because you got to travel to Buffalo this weekend. So I'm more surprised at the Jags 0-2 than any other team in this division. Now you can make a case for Tennessee being 1-1 because they came not Tennessee being 1-1, but Tennessee being 0-2 because they lost at Chicago and then they lost the Jets. Now with the weapons that they brought in, they realizing and finding out that Will Levis might not be the guy for them. You know, Callahan is pissed over there with Will Levis. He had 2 bonehead turnovers in back-to-back games. They should have closed out and beat Chicago. And you're looking at the Jets with the weapons that they brought in. One could argue that they should have beat the Jets because right now you got to take advantage of what you can take advantage of with the New York Jets. And right now, week 1, the New York Jets, they got ran on week 1 out in San Francisco, not by Christian McCaffrey because he didn't play. They got ran on by the backup, Jordan Mason, I believe his name. So if you are the Tennessee Titans, you should have took a page out of what San Francisco did by running the ball right at that New York Jets defense. That would then help take some of the pressure off of Will Levis, who had that horrible turnover in week 1. So running the ball with a guy that you brought in Tony Pollard, and I forget the other running back that's there, but you can use a dual type run backfield, to help, with the run game going up against the Jets, who you should take advantage of right now on the ground because they just got ran in by San Francisco last Monday. So, and that would then help Will Levis cut down on some of the mistakes that he made. And he had another bonehead turnover in the game against the Jets. So you could argue that Tennessee is kind of surprising sitting at 0-2 because they got a solid defense. They already had a pretty decent defense, and then you add Jerry Sneed, and then you draft a D tackle over there up front with Jeffrey Simmons, and then you bring in 2 safeties. So defensively, they all right, and offensively, what they brought in is Tyler Boyd. They added him. Then they signed Calvin Ridley, and then you had D-Hop already there. And then I forget the other receiver they drafted out of Arkansas a couple years ago, but he's still there. And then you brought in a running back with Tony Pollard. So, and an offensive lineman, they also added that in free agency too. So you should have taken advantage of what the Jets, you should have exploited the Jets on the ground while you can right now. And that would help minimize the turnovers of Will Levis to some degree. I'm not saying it'll completely minimize the turnover, but it'll help you out to some degree if you can get the ground game going on the Jets. And like you should have been doing, like San Francisco did out there with a backup, Jordan Mason. So you could argue that Tennessee is a surprising team in that division, sitting at 0-2. But yeah, that you could put them in there as a surprise team too. But the main team I wanted was, to get it with Jacksonville. Because like I said, they got the more experienced head coach in Doug Peterson with the more experienced quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. But moving on, AFC North, there's actually 2 teams in this division I'm surprised at. You're looking at the Baltimore Ravens, who are sitting at 0-2 with losses at Kansas City to open the season up, and then they lost at home against the Ravens. So if you're the Ravens, you sitting at 0-2, you got to fix this shit. You got to get this shit corrected. Because now you travel to Dallas this weekend. So you could very well go 0-3. Now, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you brought in Derrick Henry. Now, in my opinion, I think that you probably needed more of – you needed a running back, but you didn't necessarily need a Derrick Henry caliber running back. I think you needed more of more receivers. Because if you look at their receiver core, Mark Andrews is now getting injured. I think they should have been playing Isaiah Likely more. Isaiah Likely, in my opinion, is more athletic than Mark Andrews. He's more of a mismatch than Mark Andrews because not only can you line him up as a tight end, you can also split him out wide in the red zone and get a mismatch on either a slot corner, or you're gonna get him out wide on a fade route with a cornerback. Or you're going to get him on a mismatch with a linebacker. And he's too athletic to not be getting those kind of looks. I think he should be getting a lot of targets a game. Zay Flowers, your second-year receiver. I wouldn't necessarily rely on a second-year receiver. I think Zay Flowers is a good receiver for when the play breaks down. He can work. He changes direction well. He can work back well to the ball to help out Lamar when the play breaks down and Lamar has to scramble. or Lamar looking to get the ball down the field and play breakdown, I think Zay Flowers is a good receiver in that aspect. But Rashad Bateman, I don't think he is in that aspect, and he's been having some health issues too. So if you the Baltimore Ravens, you gotta figure out what the hell is going on, because you don't want to start the season 0-3, and you were supposed and coming off the type of season you had last year with an MVP quarterback like Lamar Jackson. You don't want to start this season 0-3 at Dallas, and I think Dallas got embarrassed last week, and I don't think they're going to show up and look to get embarrassed again this week. So this is a dangerous territory if you're the Baltimore Ravens. Starting the season 0-2. Now you should have won the game at Kansas City, but you didn't. So that counts as an L. And then you lost to the Raiders, which a game you was favored to win that game, but you lost that game at home too. So now you're starting the season 0-2 and possibly 0-3 going to Dallas this weekend. So like I said, Dallas don't want to come out there and show nothing and show up nothing like they did against the Saints. So don't go into Dallas and think that because you 0-2 that we about to get our first win. No, you go to Dallas and your ass could be coming back to Baltimore 0-3, because I don't think Dallas is going to show up again like that, like they showed up against the Saints. And if they do, they're going to be in some trouble. So I don't think that's what they plan to do. But, if you Baltimore, you got to look at this thing like, damn, bro, we going down 0-3. And then we looking up at the division with the Pittsburgh Steelers, are 2-0, who is another surprise team in this division, in my opinion, because they start the season with two quarterbacks. And like the old saying say, if you got two quarterbacks, you ain't got one. And they named Russell Wilson the starter. Russell Wilson couldn't go week 1 against the Falcons, so Justin Fields got the start. They went to Atlanta, won 18-10 on all field. They got all field goals. They won 18-10. And then last week, they was out there in Denver, and they beat the Denver Broncos. So they start the season 2-0 with Justin Fields, and they're going to continue to roll with Justin Fields as they start the season 2-0. Now I thought these two teams, the Ravens and the Steelers, which could possibly flip records, I thought the Ravens would be 2-0 and the Steelers would be 0-2. Because I was the one on record to say I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to get more. Arthur Smith to be the offensive coordinator, but I like I said, I was on the record to saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers is one of them teams that's got 1 foot in the new era of football, and they still got 1 foot back in the old era of football. They ain't really got all the way into the new era of football, and they need to get more offensive, especially when you got a explosive playmaker like George Pickens. You need to be getting more explosive plays. You need to be getting more offensive minded over there if you're Pittsburgh. But the way they started this season 2-0, it's just been strictly defense and really just moving the ball, moving the chains, and taking what the other defenses give you and not losing the game. Because that's exactly what they did week 1 down in Atlanta, winning the game on all field goals, 18-10. And then they went out and took care of Denver last week. Now they got to play they get their first home game this week against the LA Chargers. So if you are the LA Chargers, I'm looking for Pittsburgh to possibly beat LA, because if you're the LA Chargers, that's back-to-back weeks you'd have made a cross-country trip. Last week, or this past week, you came from LA to Carolina and you won 26-3, and now you got to come from LA back to Pittsburgh this week. So I'm Yeah. NFC East. Um, let's move on to the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles. I'm surprised that the Philadelphia Eagles they're starting 1-1. They very well could be 0-2. They squeezed out a win in week one up in Brazil against the Green Bay Packers. They also squeezed. They should have won against the Falcons. Um, the concerning thing about the Eagles, they got to travel to New Orleans. The concerning thing about the Eagles is, even though they were without AJ Brown this past week, the most concerning thing is the pass rush. They're not getting enough pass rush up front. In the back end of that defense, the secondary is getting exposed. And I think that you fuck around and go down to New Orleans the way New Orleans is playing right now, you're gonna be down 1-2 to start the season. Um, they're not stuffing the run because Atlanta was able to run the ball on Philadelphia. You got Big Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter there, and they're supposed to be stuffing the run in the middle up front. That ain't happening. You're not getting enough pass rush. Um, Now you can chalk that up and say that the Atlanta Falcons defensive line did their job. I mean, offensive line did their job, but the D line in Philly ain't doing their job. Like I said, they ain't stuffing the run. They didn't against Atlanta. Bijan ran well. Even Tyler Algier, when he came in the game, ran well. But you ain't stuffing the run up front. You ain't getting home on the pass rush stuff. And now the back end of your secondary is getting exposed. Because if Saquon had to just caught the pass, we wouldn't even have this. The Eagles did at 2-0. We wouldn't even have it. But that last drive, it was the Falcons marched down the field and scored a touchdown. They made it look easy. That was the best drive the Falcons have put together so far this season. By far, that was the best drive they put together so far this season. And the way that secondary looked on that drive, that's concerning. That's real concerning. Darius Slade gave up the game-winning touchdown. It was just a damn good route by Drake London. I got to give him that. It was a damn good play call, damn good route that London Drake ran. And he completely threw the shit out of Darius Slade. I seen Darius Slade after the game laughing and talking to Drake London and getting about it. But now you got to tilt your hat. Atlanta put together the best drive that they had so far this season. Those last minute and 39, 40 seconds of the game to get the game winning touchdown. Now, prior to that game winning touchdown, they marched down the field through the air with Kirk Cousins like it was nothing. That secondary left field receiver so wide open that it was ridiculous. I'm talking about catch and with room to run after the catch. That shit was ridiculous. So if you're the Eagles, you gotta fix that shit, especially going to New Orleans and looking at how the New Orleans Saints and open teams are playing. If you're the Eagles, you gotta fix that. And if not, then that's pretty much gonna confirm what I said about Nick Sirianni being the hot seat. Because you can't start the season 1-2, and you really could be 0-3. Because you squeezed one out against Green Bay week 1, and you wasn't able to finish and seal the deal against the Falcons week 2. So, like I said, if Saquon just gets pass first down, then we wouldn't even have this discussion. They'll be sitting at 2-0. And I'll still be saying the same thing going to New Orleans. They could possibly lose the game, which I got New Orleans winning this game and dropping the Eagles to 1-2. Despite Saquon starting the season off healthy. I'm not sure about AJ Brown. I'm not sure if he's going to be back, when he's going to be back or not. But it's concerning if the Eagles. You got to get ahead and fix this shit. Otherwise, you ain't going to be a contender in the playoffs. But the Eagles, in my opinion, this is the most surprising team in this division. Looking at the moves that they made this offseason, I don't think any other team in that division made the type of moves that the Eagles made. And those moves were made for a reason. I understand they lost Hassan Reddick. He still ain't playing. He over there dealing with a contract situation with the Jets. But that ain't the Eagles' problem now because they traded him and got rid of him. So that ain't their problem now to deal with. But and it's crazy because now that Tremaine Johnson is out over there with the Jets. Now they could use Hassan Reddick. But that's the Jets. That's their issue to deal with. They traded for him. They knew what they had to do. That's their issue to deal with. But Moving on, the NFC West. I'm sorry, NFC West. Um, the most surprising team over there to me right now is the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not gonna say San Fran. Um, San Fran dealing with injuries. Devo Samuel out. Christian McCaffrey out. Um, so I'm not even gonna say the LA Rams. Surprised that they 0-2. They dealing with a ton of injuries too. So I'm not surprised that they 0-2 dealing with the type of injuries that they're dealing with. But I'm also surprised with the Arizona Cardinals, who are 1-1, who should be 2-0 if they had got Marvin Harrison more involved in Week 1 at Buffalo, and that was a winnable game, a very winnable game on the road. But they refused to get Marvin Harrison involved in that game. 1 reception, 4 damn yards. I don't know how the hell or what the hell game plan called for that or who called that game plan, but they could have very well won that game on the road at Buffalo Week 1. They didn't. They lost it, but they came back and beat all kinds of hell out of the LA Rams. And like I said, the LA Rams banged up in a divisional game, but they ain't the Arizona Cardinals' fault. They went in there and did what they had to do and put 40. I think they put 41 up on. Let me double check. I think they did put 41 up on. It was a lopsided game. It was an ugly ass loss for the Rams. But I'm also surprised at them right now and the way they looking. Yeah, it was 41-10. I know they put 40 up. I just couldn't remember exactly what the Rams did. But it was a 41-10 game in Arizona. They came back, got Marvin Harrison Jr. more involved, like they should have been doing at the gate Week 1. And if they had done that, I'm on the fence to say they'll be sitting 2-0 right now, up at top of their division with the Seattle Seahawks. I could say the Seattle Seahawks is a surprise team sitting at 2-0, but I'm not as surprised about Seattle being 2-0. Because like I stated before in previous videos, the Seattle Seahawks is one of them teams that if you look at Mike McDonald, who's now the head coach over there, the former defensive coordinator in Baltimore, they got a solid defense with Devon Witherspoon and I can't think of my other man over there. I can't think of the other corner. But they drafted Byron Murphy. So they pretty solid defensively. And now they got a defensive-minded head coach over there. And Geno Smith took a step back last year, but he's starting this season off pretty well. So, and then you got DK Metcalf over there. You got Jackson Smith and Jigma over there. You still got Tyler Lockett there. And you got Kenneth Walker when he's healthy, who can run between your tackles outside and he can catch out the backfield. So, Seattle right now is one of them teams that's middle of the pack in that division. And they not getting enough talk because you got the Rams and San Francisco up there in that division that's getting most of the talk. But with the way the Rams are banged up and sitting at 0-2, and it's just a matter of time for for San Francisco start to kind of slide down in their division because they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy and they're going to lose some players in order to do that because Brock Purdy going to get paid. And you're dealing with Christian McCaffrey injury and he's going to be out for a period of time. I'm not sure how long, but he's going to miss time. And then you got Devo Samuel out. And then the receiver, Ricky Passau, the one that got shot, he ain't back with it. He's back with the team, but he's not playing. He's going to be out for some time too. So it just, San Francisco's going to start slightly slide. And then you got Seattle, who's not at the bottom of that division, but kind of middle ways in that division. They're going to be the team to take the next step to take over and get to the top of that division. Because I think that Seattle Seahawks is only going to get better. So I'm not surprised that they're sitting at 2-0, going on the road, making their cross-country trip at New England last week, winning an overtime game, and winning Week 1 against Denver. So I'm not surprised that they're sitting 2-0. But I'm also surprised that Arizona's sitting 1-1, and they should be 2-0. I didn't think that was going to be the case in Arizona. But had they got Marvin Harrison Jr. more involved in Week 1 at Buffalo, there's a damn good chance they would be sitting 2-0. But they 1-1, and they look good against the Rams, even though the Rams was banging the hell up. They still, it was a divisional game. There's still some tight games. And for them to come out there and beat the hell out of them 41-10 the way they did, I'm shocked that Arizona's looking the way they look. And I'm going to say it again. It's only Week 2, and there's a lot of time left. There's 15 more games left. A lot of things can happen between this Week 3 coming up and, Week 17 or 18, the end of the season. So right now is what I'm speaking on. I'm surprised that Arizona's looking the way they look. And they got Detroit this week. So we're going to see what they're really about against Detroit this week. And Detroit just came off a home loss to Tampa Bay. So Detroit is 1-1. So we're gonna see what Arizona really about. They hosting Detroit this weekend. So we gonna see what Arizona really about this weekend when Detroit come to town. Moving on to NFC North. Um, the biggest takeaway from this division right now is not the Chicago Bears, it's not the Green Bay Packers with Malik Willis, because Jordan Love is out. He's gonna miss some time. But it's the Minnesota Vikings. Losing J.J. McCarthy going down in his offseason and having to roll out there with Sam Darnold, and you're sitting 2-0 with win, and it ain't saying much that you beat the New York Giants week 1. They ain't saying a whole damn lot. But what says a lot is you came back home and you beat San Francisco. Sam Darnold is looking, is looking all right. I'm not going to jump out there and say Sam Darnold is looking damn good. Sam Darnold was looking good enough to win 2 games, to be 2-0 to start the season. I think San Francisco is front heavy on the defensive side. They good up front and they got good linebackers, but on the back end, if you can pick up the blitz and you can neutralize that front 7 to some degree, you can exploit the back end of that San Francisco 49er defense. It's just that you got to scheme ways to do that, and a lot of teams ain't been able to do that. So a lot of people ain't been able to see how you can exploit the back end of that San Francisco defense. Usually that's how defense is. When you dominate up front in the front 4, front 7, you kind of loose on the back end because you got so much tied up in the pass rush and stuff in the run and the linebackers that they kind of, you don't have that kind of dominance on the back end in the secondary. But if you kind of dominate on the back end in the secondary, you kind of don't have that dominance up front, because of the money that's paid out to the guys, So they put more into their front end, the front 4, front 7 on that defense. And then if you can contain that front 7 or front 4, whatever, on that San Francisco defense, you can get to the back end of that defense. And Sam Darnold threw a 97, 98-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson, just exploited and cooked that defense on the back end with that. And he did that with a pretty clean pocket from his own end zone. So I'm surprised right now that the Minnesota Vikings are sitting 2-0. Aaron Jones is now over there. They lost Madison to the Las Vegas Raiders. Aaron Jones is over there now. So if you Minnesota, we're going to see what you're about this weekend because you're hosting the Houston Texans. You're playing damn good ball right now. I think that defense in Houston is taking another step under DeMeco Ryans as the head coach. I think that C.J. Stroud is still playing lights out, and that's a carryover from how he played last season, which was lights out as a rookie. The addition of Stephon Diggs over there. So I think they're going to have their work cut out for them this weekend hosting the Houston Texans. So we're going to see what they're about this weekend against Houston. We're going to see if they can go to 3-0. If they can go to 3-0, then, some things might need to be said about what's going on over there with Stefanski and with Sam Darnold over there playing against Houston. Because Houston got a pretty stingy defense. They got a tough defense. Danielle Hunter, who was a former Viking, is now in Houston. So he'll be coming back to get after Sam Darnold. And then you still got Will Anderson over there. You got Ward over there on the back end. You got Stingley Jr. over there. So that's a solid team over there in Houston on both sides of the ball. So we're going to see what the Minnesota Vikings about this weekend when they host the Houston Texans. Last but not least, let's get to the NFC South. I think every team, right? Well, you can make an argument that every team in this division is surprising so far, except for the Carolina Panthers. Even though I had them opening up week 1 in an upset victory over New Orleans, but that was before we seen and known New Orleans to be what we've seen and known them to be these first 2 weeks of the season. So, and now Carolina's bench Bryce Young. They go into Andy Dalton. So let's not even talk about Carolina because that's a whole different segment that I ain't got time for today. But right now you're looking at Atlanta that's sitting 1-1. You're looking at everything that they added to this team in the offseason, and they come out and lose the season opener to Houston, and they very easily could have lost to Philly if Saquon had caught the ball and just turned his head around and picked up that first down. They would be sitting at 0-2. But they somehow got out of that game with the best drive of the season so far. That resulted in a game-winning touchdown in Philly. So they sitting 1-1, and they could easily be sitting 0-2. But they got Kansas City coming in on Sunday night, I believe. So this Atlanta Falcon team could be sitting at 1-2. And like I said before, the Atlanta Falcons schedule is pretty tough to start the season. And it lightens up as it gets towards the middle of the season. It gets even light on the back end. But sitting at 1-1 right now, if you Atlanta, you lucky that you ain't 0-2. Because you got Kansas City coming in. And you lucky you ain't sitting at 0-2 facing 0-3 with Kansas City. And I understand Kansas City just lost Isaiah Pacheco, but it's still Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid and the crew coming in. So if you Atlanta, you just damn lucky that Saquon dropped that pass Monday night. You're lucky that you was able to put together the drive, the best drive of the season so far, and you took advantage of that Eagles secondary. You was even lucky you had the opportunity and chance to do that, because if Saquon had just caught the damn pass and turned around and picked up the first down, we wouldn't even be talking about that. We'll be talking the Eagles wouldn't be a surprise team in the NFC East sitting at 1-1. And the Falcons would definitely be a surprise team in the NFC South. They would be sitting at 0-2, looking to host Kansas City Sunday night. Staring down possibly 0-3. And that ain't the company that you want to be in down at the bottom of the division with the damn Carolina Panthers, considering what you brought in to this team. Even though you got a first-year head coach, Raheem Morris, you brought Kirk Cousins in, you drafted Michael Penix, and then you got Darnell Mooney, who you brought in, who played well. And you also got you brought in traded for Matthew Judon, and then you brought in Justin Simmons. So, and then Jesse Bates sealed the deal Monday night with the pick as the Philly was trying to drive and answer, but Jesse Bates ended the game and sealed it for the Falcons. So if you Atlanta, you lucky that shit didn't turn out the way that it should have in Philly. Otherwise, you'll be sitting at 0-2 with Kansas City coming up this weekend, possibly 0-3, and there will be a lot of questions going on down there in Atlanta. But Tampa Bay sitting at 2-0 right now. They got the Denver Broncos. I think they're going to go to 3-0 unless Bo Nix and Denver just come in and play the lights out and, Baker Mayfield reverts back to the old Baker Mayfield. But right now, I was just anxious and curious to see how Baker was going to look without Dave Canales. But it seemed like whatever Dave Canales got Baker Mayfield doing, Baker Mayfield stuck with it. He didn't shy away from it. And he still is almost like Dave Canales is still there the way Baker Mayfield is playing. They went on the road this past week, beat the Detroit Lions. Baker's been looking good so far, last year, and then it's carried over so far into this season. So it damn near like Dave Canales is still there the way Baker Mayfield is making plays. So whatever it was that Dave Canales taught and put in Baker Mayfield, he still has it. It ain't left with Dave Canales. It's damn near like it's still there with Dave Canales. So they sitting at 2-0. They got Denver this weekend. I think they're going to go to 3-0 and going to drop the Denver Broncos to 0-3. They got a win against Washington, and then they got a good win last week on the road at Detroit. So I'm surprised that Tampa's sitting 2-0. Like I said, I didn't think that Baker was going to look and carry over the way he looked last season and this season with the departure of Dave Canales being in Carolina now as the head coach. But Tampa, that's one of the surprises in the NFC South, even though most people or a lot of people had them possibly winning the South. It was between them and Atlanta. But I didn't think they were going to start the season 2-0. I thought they were going to be 1-1 to start the season, beating Washington and then losing at Detroit. But they went to Detroit, took care of business, and they sitting at 2-0. The New Orleans Saints, another surprise in this division. I didn't think they were going to start the season 2-0. I didn't think that they were going to start the season scoring 40-plus points in the first two games of the season. They put 47 up on Carolina and then came back and put 44 up on Dallas in Dallas this past weekend. They host the Eagles this weekend in New Orleans. I think that, you look at New Orleans and you sitting there looking like, what the hell they got going on down in New Orleans? What the hell is in the water down there? Because you got Alvin Kamara playing lights out, just running all through defenses. Now, he did hold out a camp momentarily for a contract extension, but he eventually came back, showed up, and now he's showing you why he was holding out for a contract extension. I mean, he just catching the ball, running all over the damn defense, running out the backfield. David Carr looked like he done jumped in a time machine and went back about 5 or 6 years. Looking the way he looked when he, Oakland days. New Orleans didn't do a whole lot in this free agency because they were strapped against the cap. They brought in Chase Young. They brought in linebacker Willie Gay. And they also brought in Justin Simmons, but he didn't. Of course, obviously, he didn't leave with a contract because he's in Atlanta. So it's not a whole lot they did. They drafted the offensive lineman out of Oregon State. They also lost Marcus Davenport to the Detroit Lions. And like I said, they drafted Kool-Aid offensive lineman out of Oregon State. They also drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Bama. And Rashid's looking good, the receiver. Like I said, Alvin Kamara running through defenses. Rashid running through the damn secondary. We haven't mentioned a whole lot of Chris Olave because of how those three players have been shining: Derek Carr, Kamara, and Rashid. But you still got Chris Olave over there, and you still got a utility guy over there. What's the guy name? He all over the damn place: quarterback, running back, tight end. Taysom Hill. And I was on the fence, and on one of my previous episodes, I was the one that brought up the fact that Dennis Allen could be on the hot seat this season. But the way they then came out and started the season 2-0 and just kind of took off offensively and still playing damn good defensive ball, going to Dallas and just beating all kinds of hell out of the Cowboys in Dallas. It was 44-19, and then week one, they just beat the hell out of the Panthers, and they just took advantage of any and everything the Panthers was lacking. And the game was over on the first pass attempt by Bryce Young. They threw a pick. So they picked them off on the first pass attempt and beat the hell out of the Panthers 47-10 week one. So scoring 44-plus points in the first two games of the season, that's an offensive explosion. Like I said, I was the one that had Dennis Allen on the hot seat if they ain't do nothing this year. But the way they started these games, and like I said, it's only 2 games in, 2 weeks in. But the way they started this season with an offensive explosion, I'm not expecting them to continue to score 40-plus points the rest of the way this season. But that's a damn good offensive start to the season. The first 2 games, you score 47 points, and then you come back and go on the road against the Dallas Cowboys defense, and you put up 44 on them and only give up 19. That's a well balanced team. To have that type of offensive explosion and to be that dominant and flying all across the field, the way they fly across the field on the defensive side of the ball, that says a lot about New Orleans Saints, a team in which I had that could possibly finish third or last in this division. And with Dennis Allen being on the hot seat because they couldn't really do much in free agency because they were strapped against the cap from other issues previous years that they pushed down the road. And now they've gotten down the road, and now they got to deal with them. They did a damn good job to open this season up dealing with it. So that's another team I got surprised in this NFC South division, just in the NFC and football period, being 2-0, not really making the moves that other teams were able to make this offseason because there's a cap situation. But Dennis Allen, he seemed to got something down, seemed to have something down there in New Orleans. Like I said, we still got 15 more games to go, so it's just we'll see. But it's a damn good start for the New Orleans Saints. In not just in this division, but just overall in the NFC. So right now they looking like contenders. But like I said, you can't really say much now because there's only 2 games in, and we still got 15 more to go. A lot can happen between now and week 17, 18. But just based off of what we see now, this is these are surprise teams in my opinion. It could be some more surprise teams towards the midway point in the season, at trade deadline and down the stretch of the season, but we're going to see how it pan out. But like I said, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, going back to the Ravens for a split second, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you can't half-ass this thing and go to Dallas and lose this and go down, start your season 0-3. That can't happen. You got to find a way to go to Dallas and win. You have to go into Dallas and play smash mouth football and win that game to get back to 1-2. You can't be 0-3 and then look up at the standings and the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting 3-0, because I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to beat the Chargers at home this weekend. Like I said, the LA Chargers having back-to-back weeks in which they got to make cross-country trips. This past week they came from LA to Carolina, and this week they got to go from LA to Pittsburgh. But back-to-back weeks of going cross-country, I think with the Chargers winning last week, Pittsburgh, the way they play defensively, they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to play smash-mouth football against the Chargers. And I think they're going to do just enough offensively, having a home opener against the Chargers to pull this game out and win it. And I think they'll move to 3-0. and the Ravens can't be sitting assing around out there in Dallas and drop that game and go to 0-3 and look up at the standings and see Pittsburgh 3-0, considering that you got an MVP caliber quarterback and the Pittsburgh Steelers who have two quarterbacks. And like they say, if you got two, you don't got one. And Justin Fields only got to start by default because Russell Wilson couldn't go week 1 against Atlanta, and he won that game. And they rolled with him into week 2 against the Denver Broncos. They won that game, so they're going to continue to roll with him in week 3 against the Chargers. And so, I mean, that's just what I think with Baltimore. But, you know, make sure y'all, like I said, make sure y'all head over to YouTube and subscribe to the content. That's my time. The links, everything's scrolling down at the bottom of the screen. When you head to YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get notified. Instagram, the sports page is damn_YouTube_sports talk. You can click the link in the bio and subscribe that way. Ralph_Sneaks, that's me on IG if you want to follow me personally. And damn YouTube Sports Talk is on Twitter. It's scrolling down at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you follow, subscribe. I follow and I follow back. But that's my time, man. Until the next one, man, I'm gonna holler at y'all. Peace.